Welcome, everyone, to another episode of The Bottomless Vault, a podcast that talks about everything old school Magic the Gathering. If you're enjoying what we're doing and want to stay up to date on all our content, please hit like and subscribe on the podcast, on The Bottomless Vault, or your favorite streaming app. Also, if you want to see our podcast on video, head over to Old School MTG Live on YouTube and follow the links for all the episodes. My name is Andy Vaccaro. As always, I'm joined by my co-host, Jared Susney.
Yo.
And today we have a couple of guests. We have from California, no less, Neil Troy and Adam Barth.
Hello.
Good.
Thank you for the invite.
Awesome,
Thanks
guys.
for joining us.
And if you don't know these guys, they are from the Beasts of the Bay, and they were very involved in the production, everything having to do with Urza's Ante for this last Chalice. And I thought it would be a good idea and to have them on and to kind of go through that process because of not only all the work that they put in that I think should be commemorated, but just, I don't know, I think it's interesting in developing a set and developing an experience for players, and clearly they put in a lot of work on that, and I thought it'd be a good place to talk about it and just kill a couple hours of the day. So welcome.
Thank you.
Yeah.
A couple hours, that's daunting.
Maybe not a couple hours, at least an hour.
An hour, I told my wife an hour maybe.
Okay. But yeah, why don't we start? Would you tell us about yourselves? I know you, Neil, you mentioned that both of you guys actually grew up in the same area, or was that right?
So the Bay Area is large for people that don't know, but Adam and I both grew up in the South Bay, completely not communicating, of course, until like 2 years ago. So we didn't discover each other until, I guess, 40 years had passed, but I think we're basically the same age. So I'm from San Jose. I've lived here my whole life, and I went to school around here, things like that. I played Magic, started in 93 at the very tail end, and then early 94. I've always loved Limited more than anything else, aside from like the collecting aspect. And then I roughly got into Old School about 2 years ago, which is, I think, similar time as Adam, and then we started meeting up with the Beasts. So that's me as a brief background.
Yeah, so it's sort of a similar story, although I didn't like Limited for the vast majority of my Magic playing career. It was only some years ago when I started playing on Magic Arena, that Limited became a lot more easier for me to access, because I could just basically do a draft and whenever I wanted, and I really liked that. And I actually sort of got into it and sort of understood why people have been into Limited for so long. And so when the opportunity came along to design a Limited format with the Old School card pool, I really was excited to do it because I'd seen, what a good Limited format could be like.
Yeah. Did you once you guys found out that you had the opportunity to like develop this, what were your, I guess, goals? Like, what did you want to? Because Urza's Ante is not a new thing, right? It's been done for a couple of years now. What were your experiences on the previous Urza's Antes? Did you want to change certain things? Did you want to keep certain things, the core, the same, and had different, like, what goals did you have in mind coming into it?
Let me give you brief history for the people that don't know it. So Urza's Ante is part of what happens at Chalice, and it started in Chalice 2. Chalice 1 did not have Urza's Ante, and the original Urza's Ante was based upon a cube. I believe it was Elliot's cube, Elliot Davidoff, I believe, and that was run by Mike Van Dyke. So Mike Van Dyke basically took a cube and found a way to curate it into stuff that people got into their hands when they walked into Chalice 2. For Chalice 3, 4, and 5, it was Jeff Liu. So Jeff Liu is a professional game designer, and every year it's morphed into some things that are always going to be new. So for example, we don't repeat anything. So we wouldn't start with Elliot's cube again. That's already been done. And then Jeff Liu basically every year comes up with some new mechanic. One year it was everybody got Moxen instead of basic lands. So that should accelerate the gameplay massively. Whether it's a positive or a negative, that's just an idea. The next year, I believe he tried to make Crawworm good. So You have to craft the card pool to make Craw Worm good. And then Chalice 5, which was the first one that Adam and I went to, basically every card was double-faced, so there were no lands by themselves.
Right.
Every spell had a land on the back, and that by itself made it very interesting how you would play them. Also introduced throughout this is we always have to make one custom land at minimum, and that
Okay.
can help change the format. So for Chalice 5, the land that was made had a special ability that you could return your other lands to your hand. So you could use basically the lands which have spells on the back, play them as lands, and then 5 turns later, return it to your hand to get back a boomerang or force spike or whatever card was on the other side. So you had to think about both sides. Yeah.
I remember like maybe like the second or third game, people were like, wait a second. Yeah, this is like important. I don't have to like get rid of my really good card that I put down to play a land because that's the only card I could not cast or whatever. But
So that land you had like a tap mechanic that would allow you to return one of the lands back to your hand so you can then recast it as a spell.
exactly. Yeah.
The whole thing was like mind melting because like if you had like 7 lands in play and like 5 cards in hand, you basically had a hand of like 12 cards.
Right.
Right.
So many options.
you're doing this thing like
up the
back and
lands.
forth. You're like, oh, but it was interesting, definitely.
So
yeah.
that's what we walk into. And the beast to do Chalice, it's roughly like 10-month lead time for us to do it. So call it 10 months before we had Chalice, which was in February. So that would be like April of 2024. Roughly a dozen of the beasts are part of the planning committee, and we basically volunteer for what we want to do. And so I really loved Chalice and Urza's Ante last time, and so I volunteered to be part of Urza's Ante. And part of it was I was a little strong on it. I didn't want any other beasts to know what we were doing because I
really?
wanted, so I was overly strong about it, but I wanted it to be a secret for everybody because I feel with 12 people, if I just tell them all the secret, that's like a quarter of the people at the event are going to know the tricks of the event, and I really didn't want that. So that's roughly what we're walking into. And Adam, if you want to say anything, otherwise I can go into some details.
Yeah, we did have help from Jeff and from Mike, who had experience doing this before. So they were sort of our consultants. And so we learned a lot of the history that I didn't know from them. Like I'd experienced one versus Ante at Chalice, but I didn't know the full history that Neil set out there. I think when you come to do the next iteration of a event like this, it's really important to know the history and not repeat a thing that's been done, or to like understand what's in bounds, what's out of bounds, what are the sort of must-haves for the event, like what do we need to do, what do people expect. So like for Urza's Ante, one of the things that people expect is foils, and so we had to think about how we were going to incorporate foils into the event. And there are even like particular foil cards that people want to see. Like people want to see the foil card for each of the club mascots for people who attend the event, that sort of thing. And so we got a list of constraints and tried to work with the people who run the event before to figure out, we make sure we mapped out all the constraints that we were operating under.
Yeah, I remember last year I was like, how is there no Sisters of the Flame? What's going on here, guys? They were like, oh yeah, sorry about that. Sorry. All right, we'll fix it next year. Don't worry. But yeah, that was cool. It was a cool addition.
So let me lay the groundwork. The basic idea, again, for people that don't know it, is people are going to be flying in on Friday in the morning or early afternoon, and then they're going to be a captive audience for the next 48 hours, at least in terms of gameplay, is what we're shooting for. So the goal of Urza's Ante is to create something that is enjoyable for 48 hours, that old school people that have virtually the same experience as you find interesting as a collective. And there are different ways to do that. So Jeff Liu, he's a game designer. He can hit those notes by designing interesting elements like that land thing that we mentioned. That required a lot of thought. I don't think I could come up with that if I had to come up with anything, right? But that's, I would argue, very mentally taxing as a player. You have to do things very differently. And so it's not that we wouldn't do something similar. It's, okay, I have, call it 64 people of varying skill levels in Limited, and I want to try and get all 64 to go on this journey for 48 hours. and what is the best way that we can come up with to do it. So that's like the idea.
It's a big ask too. It's almost as if you're like, if you compare it to modern Magic, just a new set and all these mechanics and stuff, and you're kind of asked to push the envelope to like invent something new. It's like such a big expectation.
Well, I think like everyone who's walking into that room has this like network in their brain that contains basically all the cards in this format. And you sort of think of it like an instrument. Like, how can you make use of that network to have something new and interesting happen? So it's kind of a different problem from designing a new set where you have to invent new mechanics or invent new stories or things. You're trying to play something familiar but in a new way.
Right.
Or just add any cards from Legends, because most people still don't know what half of those are.
Correct.
But that's the point. So in constructed old school, you see the same kind of cards over and over again. So one way to play new music with the same instrument is to get cards that normally you don't see in old school, make them stars, make them things people want to play with and have good experiences with.
Yeah, so let's take that one further. So I wanted to do a very strong limited, like classic limited creature combat centric. And if on the second you get the card, everybody has 4 lightning bolts and 4 swords, you're not going to cast any of your creatures, right? So like those are obvious things to avoid, like, ooh, don't put swords out there instantly, because if that happens, you're going to neuter creature combat. But we can go further and say you basically can't run terror, which doesn't see a lot of old school play, but it has a similar effect. And then you can go more obscure with things like even Boomerang becomes a real feel bad. It's a 2 mana spell, bounce, and 8 thing to your hand. Like, that's not what we're trying to do. But we still want to have creatures in combat. And so part of the flavor we were going for was pulling all the obscure creature combat or creature removal. So like weakness is one people probably know, but we put a crap ton of immolation in the format, which is it's a great control, but it's not damage based, right? It allows you to make informed choices throughout the event. So like that's like the power level we're shooting for. And
it also does 2 instead of 3. So normally in old school, like 3 to 4 toughness is the magic transition between a durable and a not durable creature. But we were aiming more for 2. So there are a lot of creatures that have 3 toughness that are a lot stronger in Urza's Ante than they are normally in old school.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
Segovian Leviathan gets his day.
Yes, exactly.
And I definitely got a sense of that from. You haven't touched on this, but basically throughout the weekend, everyone gets packs after every meal, and so it's 3 packs to kind of add on to your card pool. And the power level, which kind of you alluded to, Neil, is that it increases slowly as the weekend progresses, and so those swords of plowshares or those bolts will get introduced, or did get introduced, the day later or 2 days later or whatever.
So even I didn't even make the wait list for this event. That's how cool I am. So I'm basically just trying to extrapolate information from this like insane spreadsheet you guys have, which is like super sweet. I love this stuff. So it kind of looks like, you came up with like the jumpstart kind of idea where you have like 2 like decks that you're shuffling together first to build your first deck before the boosters are then allotted as the weekend progresses.
Yeah, as Neil says, like, we're not expert game designers, and there's been 30 years of like game design gone into Magic. And so one of the things we looked at the beginning is what can we take from what Magic has become over those years and incorporate it back into this format. And so like last year with the modal double face land, same kind of idea. But here we thought, Jumpstart has been a very popular way of playing Magic recently. What if we did Jumpstart but with old school cards? And so then that came to the question of now we need to design a bunch of themed packs like you have in Jumpstart to basically begin the event.
I had no idea there's actually a Plaguerats. There's 2 Plaguerat packs here, which is hilarious. That is funny.
So when you guys did, like, when you designed the initial Jumpstart packs, like what was your process with that? Looking at the spreadsheet here, like, did you just grab like your cards or collections and start throwing stuff together, or did you just do it like via spreadsheet? You just sat down, pounded out lists, and then figure out what worked and what didn't? Or
The first step was to come up with themes, like what kind of themes do you want represented. So we took sort of major archetypes in. We thought first of all to start with 2-color jumpstart packs. Normally in jumpstart they're monocolor, but we thought with the mana base in old school we could support multicolor jumpstart.
Right.
So for example, for blue white we had blue white flyers was a theme. So we generated a list of 10 or 20 different themes. We had like zoo, we had poison, enchantress, Tron, reanimator. And then the next step was we brainstormed, okay, what would a pack look like if we went through that list? So Neil did some and I did some, and then we compared notes. And what we found was that our assumed power level was like wildly different. I had just like jam-packed the packs with all the coolest cards I could think of for Reanimator. And Neil was like, I'm going to put 1 rare in this pack and like 3 uncommons and a bunch of commons. Mm-hmm. So then we had a heart-to-heart to figure out what do we really want this event to be like.
So right, like Neil was saying, if you go too hard out of the gate, it kind of takes a little away from like the expanding it with packs later on, and then the trading aspect. You want to make things innately valuable, before you're adding to those pools, right? So
correct. And part of the limited, again, like when you have 64 people, many of them don't play limited, and so you have to pull them along on this story. So like, I don't doubt that Mano and Jeff Liu can put together anything in that card pool, but then there are other people that don't ever play limited, and I need to give them bones to something to do. And that's part of that theme of like Urnham was a theme, like green-white zoo kind of stuff, with various payoffs. And we don't need to dwell on whether we did a good job of the payoffs for all of them, but like introducing Urnham as the rare for your pack, that is a rare. It should be treated as a rare. 4 mana, 4/5 is strong, but then it might have been paired with like a Elvish Archer, and then it might have a Ley Druid, and you just go, what am I doing with a Ley Druid? And you're like, well, I gotta put stuff there, but that Ley Druid also might be more interesting to you than Urnham Jin, and so you might go down a path of like, oh, how much could I do with Wild Growth and Ley Druid or any other trickery, right? Mm-hmm. So it's trying to give you 40 cards to start with that have at least 2 separate visions because they're 2 separate jump starts, but also another spare amount of cards that might point you in a direction that you're more comfortable in, to try and pull people along on this story.
Yeah. The other choice we made fairly early was to expand the card pool slightly, to pull in some cards from pre-modern into the event, particularly cards that have interactions with old school cards that you just never see. Like in pre-modern or in old school, because the interaction spans the 2 formats. So one example was had Illusionary Mask and Fire Extreme Dreadnought, which the way they combine means you can put the Dreadnought in play and then flip it over and you never have to sacrifice the creature piece. Or we had Sneak Attack and the Phoenix that ends up, like when it dies to Sneak Attack, it comes back into your hand and you can Sneak Attack it again. Things like that.
How did you guys decide on what cards to include? And obviously there's thousands of cards you can pick, but did you just make 2 lists and compare, or did you just look at the packs that you had already created and say what would help this theme? Like, so it's a little overwhelming.
The first thing we did was start with the old school card pool and just cross off every card that you absolutely don't want. So for example, there's no Circle of Protections, there's no wards, there's some obvious garbage that we got rid of. Come to some decision early on, like there's 0 Mishra's Factory. We've seen a lot of Mishra's Factory, don't need to have it in this thing. So that's rip out everything you don't want in old school. And then it was, hey, what is really interesting to you? So for me, I pushed very heavily at the beginning that Necropotence and Sneak Attack should be there, and we should find a way that they aren't abusive on the first day and a half. And I'd like to say we hit most of that medium. But then, yes, it was okay. Roughly by the time we got to call it deck 45 out of our 64 or whatever we had to get to, then we were like, is there a pre-modern card that might enable a new archetype? So like, I'm just looking at, we have a Pestilence Dervish deck that's trying to do Whirling Dervish and Pestilence things, and the rare we gave it was Vitali Ildal, which I think is a Tempest multicolored rare that I think makes a toughness of 1 for a creature or something like that, right? So you could knock down a dragon easily with that. And otherwise it was getting stale of like, well, I can only put Pestilence and Dervish together so many times. I need to find some other way to make it a little more interesting with a single card.
And that's where the themes really help, because you can look for cards that exist in pre-modern that really like fill out the theme. Another example is like for elves, right? We went and looked at a bunch of pre-modern elves and thought about which ones would be interesting to combine with the old school elves. Or I like Evil Eye as a card, and it turns out there's a new Evil Eye card. And so we added that to the card pool, so someone who wanted to do Evil Eye things could have 2 eye creatures instead of there being not a single other eye creature in all of old school to combo with Evil Eye.
There's so many. You guys put so much work into this that I feel I almost have this feeling like when you play a game, like a Nintendo game, like a role-playing game, and you go through it, but then you didn't open all the doors. So you have to play it again. So to get through all the possible iterations of the story, I don't remember anywhere near this many archetypes being built on the weekend of Urza's Chalice. So like I feel like you could just run this pool again and you'd still get new decks being made. That's how much
the joy of the event for me is to see what people had done,
like what they made, right?
Yeah, we put a lot of threads out there, and like what did people knit together with those threads? And some of it is, I think some of the threads are hard to find. Like if you don't think that there's an eye involved, or like the person who opens the Evil Eye doesn't care about the Evil Eye, they're just going to drop that thread, and that's okay. But the idea is to just put out so much material there that people can work with it.
Were there a couple of decks out there that you were hoping people grabbed onto but didn't see, or kind of a favorites that you had?
I mean, poison is like a pet theme of mine, so I put in like every poison creature I could find. But maybe poison is never going to work. Yeah.
I noticed in the card amounts there was quite a few serpent generators in there. I was like, that's interesting.
let's push this.
Yeah, I think other ones were we had a Walls deck. We had a couple copies of Walls deck, and not Animate Wall. It was Rolling Stones, which should have powered it up heavily, and it did not.
I don't even know what does Rolling Stone do.
I think it animates all your walls.
Oh, really? Oh, okay.
So like that should be a lot better. But it did not really come.
Didn't service. Yeah.
Which obviously it's fine. I think to Adam's point, like I think somebody ended up randomly getting the Enchantress pile to start with, and they are an Enchantress player. And so having Argothian Enchantress instead of Verdurin, right, is just like, I can actually do this now.
This is amazing. I have to do this.
Right. So things like that. It was still like Hecatome. I really wanted somebody to go off with Hecatome. Didn't really happen, but I was hoping.
Yeah. Were there any decks that you saw? I don't know how many decks you saw at the end of the weekend, but that interactions that you didn't see, that you were like, oh, that kind of makes sense, maybe, or I'd be surprised if you saw something innovative given the amount of packs that you have here.
I was surprised how strong Dreadnought was. I mean, I guess Dreadnought's really good in pre-modern. I was kind of hoping it would be like cool and usable, but not be one of the best decks in the format. So I'm a little regretful that we put in that power level, because it sort of steamrolls over things.
It's surprising because a lot of the chat, like there's lots of artifact removal, right? Like everybody could end up with 6 artifact take cards. So you would think naively, you can get out of this problem. I gave you the pieces to get out of it. And it did not appear to be that way. Granted, I think it ended up being, was it Florian? Not Florian. I think a beast ended up getting like 6 dreadnoughts or something, which is an absurd amount in a 40-card deck. But still, like, and vision charms. I mean, we put the pieces.
I wonder if he started hate trading, getting all those disenchants in chat. No, give it to me. No. You don't need that. There's no artifacts.
I think that's another part for your audience that doesn't know is it is a sealed event in terms of they start with the cards, but then you're free to trade however you want to trade. I know you talked about it on your last episode, but that trading part, this year it seemed to be really trade heavy compared to, I want to say, Chalice 5, which was not as trade heavy. I think it was harder to assess the bimodal cards than it was here, where, hey, I don't need a Dreadnought and you have an Icy, I'll take the Icy kind of thing. It's like, all right, that's easy trade.
Sounds good, yeah.
I think it's also easier for people to identify like what lane they were in, because they they had 3 jumpstart packs to start with, and they had 1 random pack, and they say, okay, I want to go in this direction, and that means they had like 2/3 of their cards that they wanted to trade with someone else.
Mm-hmm.
I was really worried because I was talking to Urbano beforehand at the Risk in 24, and he's like, "Yeah, I hate Urza's Ante because it always ends up being white weenie," and I'm like, "Oh, I need to make sure it doesn't get white weenie heavy." So like, there are white weenie pieces, but it's got a lot of like holy strength as filler, right? You can't just go 8 Ication Javelineers and 8 Savannah Lions to just steamroll, right? I think Crusade, there might only be like 8 total copies out there. I mean, we have it in our spreadsheet, but like we knew there were some archetypes that we didn't want to fully go. But then you also know that Jeremy loves Muirfolk, so I have to put Muirfolk in here. Otherwise, one of the beasts is going to be upset. That being said, I can at least make it expensive for him. So like we have all the lords in there, and he loves trying to hunt for them. So it was like a process of, okay, there might be white weenie lovers, but I can't have that steamroll. There was somebody, Reed ended up going with goblins, and he stuck with goblins from the beginning. And it was powered up goblins. I think we have Goblin Lackey and things like that, but it didn't end up steamrolling people like you might expect.
Mm. Yeah, I think the aggro decks tend to be favored, at least by the end of the weekend. It's either combo or aggro, and kind of mid range just falls to just doesn't get the job done.
It's just hard in the card pool. There just isn't a ton of support for mid range.
Yeah.
Even when you try to curate it, it just isn't there. Like there's just not that many 2-for-1s and not that many ways of like grinding out advantage.
I'm just looking through you guys. Did you guys print any hand denial stuff? Like any new stuff, like duress or anything like that?
Gerard's Verdict we put in, but we specifically didn't put him to Torok in until I think very late. So Gerard's Verdict was leading you to be black-white, kind of like in pre-modern space. Mm-hmm. And then there's Funeral Charm was also there. Yeah. So we put originally start, we put all the Mirage Charms, which never see play, but they have a lot of combat trick parts to it. And then I think Saturday morning, all the Visions Charms entered. So that's where Vision Charm came in. That's where Funeral Charm came in, which are much stronger because Funeral Charm letting you discard. And I think, was it Ebony Charm is opponent loses 1 life. And I know that Stephen Hines got Mike Van Dyke, or Mike Van Dyke got Stephen Hines. Stephen Hines had Ollie from Cairo with Spectral Cloak on, but then Ebony Charm went right around that. Which is exactly and it was like within the first hour, and it was like, oh, this is great. Like, we've already done the thing. The card that was put there to get around something succeeded, yeah.
It's also just not an interaction you ever see. Like, no one from LA from Cairo ever has to face that situation, right? Because it's just, those card pools just don't intersect.
Like, let me look at that. Wait, damn it. That's funny. This is a lot of stuff. I went artifacts early because I guess I got one of the. It wasn't my initial pack, but it was the booster pack that I got. They gave me all the Tron lands. I was like, okay, I'll try it. I'll see.
Yeah, that was a nice thing that we could do with Jumpstart, was to give you the sets of Tron lands, right? Instead of having to find them in random packs and trade for them, and like you actually get like, I could build artifacts using this. Yeah. But then we gave you bad artifacts. We gave you like Aladdin's lamp or something. Yeah,
it was a total trap. Thanks, guys, for that. Thanks, guys.
No, there were good artifacts out there.
It was like icy. Is like the best thing.
Once you have Tron assembled, I mean, Aladdin's lamp's not that bad.
We did a playtest actually over at Neil's house where we were like testing, okay, what is Tron actually going to be like? Like, I got an Aladdin's lamp. I was using it. I was like, oh man, this card actually, it does something. I've never seen it do anything before.
Yeah, I guess. But then you have to have the cards in your deck to draw with the lamp to do something.
Yeah.
And I don't know.
And it works.
Maybe I gave up too soon. Did
you trade away your Initiates of the Ebon Hand and your Drain Life?
I don't even think I ever went. I went mono brown. I never saw an Initiates.
Andy was going hard for those Triassic eggs. That's what was going on.
The Triassic eggs. And there was that dragon from Tika's Dragon.
Yeah.
That was like, oh, this is cool, but No, I don't think 5-5 was cutting it.
It's 9. It's 9 for a 5-5, right?
Yeah,
if I remember correctly.
But the artwork looks so cool.
Yeah.
It looks like I won the game. I did the thing. I cast my dragon. What are you gonna do? Oh, you just bolted me. Okay. Good game. All right.
I believe you went Jester's Cap route, though, right?
Yeah,
I did. Jester's Cap.
I did try to do the Jester's Cap, and yeah, that worked. But then I can't get once people get out removal. The decks were so fast at that point. I was like, oh, this is not working out. So, but it was fun. And people did not want to trade me their Jester's Caps initially, but I'm like, come on, man. But
so you're hinting at one of the biggest challenges, like in retrospect for the event, is you don't know how hard everybody's going to go. So right. Let's just use Mano as an example. If he goes super hard and just becomes overpowered in the first 4 hours, like people are going to stop playing against him, right? And you're going to start knocking out a quarter of the people, and that's very difficult because you want to let people trade. And so probably if we were to do it again, we'll find some way that you can't just overpower, or at least maybe it's group overpowering, right? Because it becomes very obvious, oh, I do not have the cards to compete with what you're doing. So this isn't fun, right? And there's no way out of that hole.
Yeah.
Well, I think the pack helps, right? You might be able to get, I mean, I see what you're saying. You make the packs day 2 may give you some stuff, or you may probably open up a crazy card and get stuff that might improve your deck. But after a day and a half or a day, and you're not getting anywhere, then it's tough. Then it's like, and I don't know if there's an answer to that. It's just the natural development of the card pool that you put out there.
So one of the things we try to do is add another dimension to the event that wasn't just playing. There was a collecting dimension to the event. So for the pre-modern cards that we put into the pool, we redid their artwork and frame. Well, we use the same like artwork, but we redid the framework of the cards and reworded them and made them appear sort of as if they were printed in beta. And so we tried to make it so those might be interesting for people to collect. If, let's say they wanted to use them in their pre-modern decks because they like the treatment of them. Or I don't know if you want to talk about the altars.
Yeah, so talking about just in general Urza's Ante, we're trying to get 64 people to enjoy the format. Playing it is one way. Crafting your deck is another way. But then collecting the cards, you can talk to probably 8 to 10 people, so like a sixth of the event. They love collecting. It's the only time you're going to be able to collect old school cards by ripping packs, right? That those days are long gone. We're not all millionaires. So the idea of, oh crap, here is a thing, I need to go get these things. So I know Stephen Hartford, when at Chalice 5, which was the previous year, he loved the collecting and the trading aspect of it. And because of my conversations with him, we wanted to put a lot of special things in there for people that wanted to collect. So every card that is not part of old school is printed as if in beta, and Adam put a ton of work into getting all of the formatting right on those, so they all look like impeccable. All of the spacing of the words is correct. Sometimes the text is centered and big, sometimes it's not, trying to make it feel like beta, so it doesn't just look like, you know, a Scryfall card that we just printed out. And then other parts for that were, because Adam and I are both, we had 10 months to do stuff, and we both started early enough. I was able to get some cards printed, way ahead of time. And getting the cards printed way ahead of time allowed us to do things that were unique. So I sent them to about 5 or 6 people around the country to have them alter some cards. So they were hand painted or Posca'd, whatever people wanted to do. And they ended up in the packs because we had like probably 5 months after I got the cards before the event. But that's just kind of showing you the scale of what we're dealing with, is because we had 10 months. We ordered the cards early. We got everything early. It requires a lot of planning, but then I think there were 36 altars out there. And yeah, I mean, that's to just get a free altar from Dom or Cam. Yeah, that one I did. I see that. Shannon did Dryad. Yeah.
Nice.
These came out great. And that's what I like. Like you mentioned that there's different ways to enjoy yourself. And, I kind of gave up a little early, maybe too early, and on my mono brown deck. But I started trading for these, and I don't know if you mentioned that the foiling. You had two different types of foils: the regular foil, and then you had the foils with the full art in the back. As I
Correct.
show my Banana Shiro, so there were like little things that you can, if you were into it, you can collect. And I did it. I think they would make great prizes just for tournaments that I run later on. I could just put that in, and my people might like it. And you know, that was great insight that you guys had on that and what other people might be doing.
The other thing we
Thanks.
did is we took all of the promotional art from that time period for basic lands, and then we gave everyone. So normally in Jumpstart, if you get a Jumpstart pack, there's one special basic land. Like you have the dog themed Jumpstart, you get a dog themed land.
Mm-hmm.
So we had those promotional arts printed as if they were in beta. So they don't look like what those normal basic land promos look like. They look like beta lands, but with the promotional art. So we put those in the packs. And some people collected those and tried to create the full set and even figure out what the full set was of those.
Oh, with the different editions, right? With the Guru,
Guru
the,
lands.
the
Yeah,
Guru,
okay.
and the APAC lands and all this stuff. Yeah.
And the card that I'm most proud of in the whole event is the Chaos Orb, because in the old school community, we play with an errata on Chaos Orb that basically changes completely what it does. And so we printed Chaos Orb with that wording, with the old school wording of Chaos Orb, but printed it as it looked in beta. And so it's like a kind of a Chaos Orb that you never get to see.
Was that hard to actually format all those cards? Or
It's a lot of detail-oriented work. So I created basically a computer program that would take in the specification of the cards from Scryfall, and then take in the art, and then basically render the card. Um, so you have to make sure you get all the fonts correct. You have to make sure you get all the spacing and positioning and everything right. There's this uncanny valley problem that you get into where if something is very far away from what a regular card looks like, people accept it as, okay, this is just a different card game or a different card. And then you get too close, it starts becoming like, this is a little weird, like what's going on here? And the key to doing this is you have to get over that. And you have to get close enough to the real thing that people just accept it without even realizing it. So
yeah, it's very natural. And I'm looking. I didn't want to tell anybody that I had the Chaos Orb foil with the full art in the back because I knew they just want to trade it off me, and I didn't want to say no to everybody, so I kept it a secret until I got home. So this came out great. Like it's almost as if this is the way it should have been printed. Like, it doesn't look like anything was changed. So people might look at this and say, well, that's Chaos Orb. Like,
So that's
yeah, and there are a bunch of inside jokes that way. So another thing we did is we asked some people in the community to write new flavor text
Okay.
for existing cards in beta, and we just changed the flavor text.
Oh, that's right. That was one of the challenges, right? That find what was eroded or something.
so
Is that am I not?
yeah. So
Am I making that up?
for how you interact with Urza's Ante. So we tried to have 3 different prizes for participating throughout the weekend, and one was, if you have the best deck and you get the most Ante cards or something, you can win. The second one was the collector, build the greatest collection, whatever that means to you. Brief side story, that used to be called get the most foils, and we got some feedback that people didn't like that because then all the foils were gone to 2 or 3 people that were chasing for them.
Oh, yeah.
And then it was up to them to give them up willingly at the end of the event, which they may or may not do. So this time the rules were just like the best collection. And then the third one, we tried to put like a scavenger hunt throughout the weekend. So there were various parts, as Adam mentioned. The flavor text was changed on, I think, 30 something beta cards. So I recruited Portello, Stephen Hines, Joe Marr, Tony, myself to just edit flavor text on beta. And there's like lots of references to what people like. So like, I think on Drudge Skeletons or Zombie Master, I made it a quote from Army of Darkness. I took other quotes from other movies and just shoved them into there. To see if you could find them all, we would give you a prize. The full art back of the cards, part of what makes it look so good, what that wasn't mentioned was we didn't take the Scryfall image. So it's super easy to take the Scryfall image and do whatever you want with it.
Yeah, that's what everybody does, right?
That's what everybody does.
Yeah.
It's totally understandable. But the Scryfall image is a scan of a card. And when you blow up the scan of the card, all you see are the little dots. And it doesn't look so great when you blow it up. So we only did the full art back for anything I could find the original art for, because they don't have the dots. So if you look at the back of that Chaos Orb or the Benelish Hero, there are 0 dots whatsoever, because I had to go find the original art for it. Because I printed a test print of it. I could show it here. It doesn't look like much to you, but there's Spirit Link. I have the other Spirit Link here. The one is super washed out because it has all the little dots that just got blown up, and it looks like hot garbage, and so I hate it.
You're like, I can't put this out. I have a name.
Yeah. I think that again goes to like the effort for the event. Like, we printed test prints of cards before we printed, call it like the $3,000 order of all the cards, right? So that we knew, okay, this came out exactly like we wanted, or, oh, we have to go change this. So I know for Adam, because he was doing the re-rendering of cards, we printed a set of cards with all of the colors so that we could understand, did black print like we wanted, did red, blah, blah, blah. And then he went and tweaked red a little bit because it didn't look quite right.
I tweaked them all. I
Yeah.
try to color correct them all to make them come out right.
Yeah, that's crazy. Like, no, in a good way. That you guys, the amount of detail that you guys went into this is just insane. And I think a lot of people would have been just fine with, doing the Scryfall, or maybe not even ordered proofs, quote unquote proofs, before the final set. But it makes sense. It makes sense because it's a huge order. You don't want anything to get messed up, and you want to put out something that at the end of the day people are keeping, at least some of it are keeping, or people are taking home to play with others. I know that a lot of at the end, a lot of the stuff that people didn't have any interest to take home, they just put it to a big pile, and whoever wanted to take it home. I met somebody from Europe that was taking it to play with his friends or with other people, and it's good that that much detail was put into it, because they're out there, and
I think most people who play in the event will not experience all of that, but
Yeah.
they'll feel the depth
Yeah.
that's there, even if they don't know quite everything that's there. And different people will feel different parts of it, and I don't know. That's what part of what motivates me to do this kind of work is to. Well, we lost Neil, but to provide that feeling.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you guys did a great job, and I think those cards, those double back cards, they're kind of a little memento of the weekend, and that everybody loves. So great.
Another fun thing we did is we made these curio cards. So if you're familiar with Sorcery, the Contested Realm, which is another card game sort of similar to Magic, they have these cards called curios, which are like intentional misprints that they put in their packs at very low occurrence rates. And so we took that same idea and tried to apply it here. So for example, we took the Sanger Vampire and we printed it, like 2 copies of it with the art rotated the way the artist had intended it to be. Or we printed a version of Sarah Angel with the Time Elemental
Nice
misprint, things like that. And some of them were really subtle. So like we took Clone and we flipped the art. We mirror image the art. And Clone art is almost a mirror image, but
so
not
it was okay.
exactly. Yeah.
And was that done to every clone, or is just one that's flipped?
We did 2 of each because we wanted to make sure for the scavenger hunt that people would be able to find them. And we knew if we just printed 1 of something, then maybe someone would open it and put it in their box and no one would ever see it. So each of the curios had 2.
That's cool. Yeah, I definitely saw the Time Elemental one. It's a fun little Easter egg there to have.
Looks like there's you guys did a blue hurricane, like summer style in there.
We did 2 actually. So we did one blue hurricane summer style, and then we did blue hurricane with a blue pip instead of a green pip. So
interesting.
So it was actually made it actually blue instead of just having the blue
cool.
framework.
What's the storybook neck row?
Oh, I just liked the art. on the storybook necro that they printed. They printed that recently in one of the recent sets. I just thought the artwork was cool. So what if necro had this cool artwork?
I think part of all of the things that you're hearing are what happens when you have more than one person trying to do an event, right? So I know the beasts are pretty unique that we have a huge group of people working towards something. So it just allows Adam and me to go away and just do this part of the event. So like I can imagine we probably spent collectively 500 plus hours designing this thing, right? And if we also had to go get an artist and get a venue and coordinate food, like
That's impossible.
Impossible.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
But you can also see that you can do it with just two people, right? We didn't do anything crazy. Obviously, Adam is great at programming because he was able to program all the things for the cards, right? But even without that, just getting ahead of it, getting the cards, play testing the format ahead of time, finding out what works and doesn't work, coming up with interesting ideas. It all can be done if you have the right help around you, I want to say.
I feel like two people is good because you can bounce ideas off each other, and you can come up with crazy ideas. The other person can rein you in, or they can encourage you, or whatever. So I don't know. I found it very helpful to work with Neil and have two people.
Yeah, when Neil, when you first mentioned that you guys wanted to keep the information and what or everything about Urza's Ante kind of a secret for everybody, including the beasts, I thought that's great in practice, but you can theory craft a lot, but when you start playtesting, it doesn't work out all the time, and things come up where like, oh yeah, that really wasn't a great idea. So I was wondering if you guys had enough time to actually playtest and all these different ideas, just the two of you. But it sounds like you did. It wasn't.
I noticed at the end of the spreadsheet, the last sheet on there is like the parametrics, where it looks like you kind of had mashed your decks together and then kind of were grading them based on how strong they work together or weak or whatever. But it looks like it kind of petered out at some point. So I mean, this is a massive undertaking. So did you guys like start doing this and then realize that like you're not going to be able to jam all these like decks together and like test everyone out to see if anything needs tweaking or anything like that?
For sure. That pair matrix, so it's a giant matrix of grading of 1, 2, 3, or ungraded. And the point was to try and identify for a 20 card pool, what could it pair with that was either the right strength that we wanted, overperforming or underperforming. And I think the reason we stopped was it became pretty obvious at some point. So like we didn't have to play test everything. So once we play tested, call it maybe 20 of the half jump starts, we could identify the power level we actually wanted, and then it was pretty easy to keep it there. But again, it didn't anticipate the trading veracity that happened very quickly. So I think there are obviously some very strong pairs, like Ali from Cairo, Spectral Cloak. If it hadn't gone against Ebony Charm, would have been a nightmare for the opponent, right? And instead, they had an answer. I think we did try and, I know Adam really liked Ali as a combo, and I was very scared of it. And so I wanted to make sure that there were ways out of that combo. So like that's one of the reasons the Ebony Charm is there. But also things that could return enchantments and things like that were all meant to maybe call it like 2/3 of the deck should have an answer for what one person is doing. So that's the logic I wanted. And I think we roughly did that correctly.
I think the main thing I learned from that playtesting is just how robust a game Magic is. Like you can shuffle together a bunch of cards that don't make any sense together, and you can still play the game. Like it's still functional. But we did find some cards in playtesting that were just sort of overpowering. So like Bazaar Baghdad was just like too much. Like the fact that it let you just like throw away your garbage cards and get to your good cards, which is like very, very strong. And so once we sort of got a feel for that, it became easier to evaluate. I'm sure if you were going to open this format up and play it many, many times, you would need to study it more. But I think we had enough of a feel for the like one shot run of it.
Right. Yeah. No, I think it came together nicely. Definitely.
Did you get any feedback from any of the players afterwards about like maybe an idea they had that maybe you guys felt like you missed once everything was done? Or
Oh my gosh, there's so many ideas. Every person I talk to,
Right.
but like we had a whole like documents full of ideas too. And like I think you could run this kind of event for many many years and always do something new and creative each time. And I think the idea is not to take this and iterate on it. The idea is to like do something new next year, and people have lots of great ideas for that.
Yes, agree. I could tell you, Sean Sullivan was not happy with his deck after the first hour, very vocally, as Sean is known to be. So that was an example of, okay, let me give Sean another pile of cards so I can avoid the loud complainer.
Just don't want to hear it. Just here, try again.
Yeah, here, take this card. Yeah, his pile definitely was like probably one of the worst piles that we had, which is not. You don't want to give it to the most vocal person, but maybe you actually do, because we were able to address that problem. Because that's part of. I didn't intend for it to be this way. In practice, it worked out that throughout, I basically didn't play anything all weekend. For the first full 24 hours, I would go around to everybody and find out what they were doing for Urza's Ante and try and help push them in a lane that made some sense, because I had the knowledge, but they didn't. So I know, like, I talked to Andy and I gave him a card early on to be like, hey, would this help you on your path to what you're trying to do? So in that regard, I failed because the format didn't naturally do it. But one person out of the 64 there being able to help the 63 others was what it helped get everybody through. So I know, like, Pez was a little confused for a period of like, I don't know what my deck is trying to do. But he happened to have a bunch of zombie cards and didn't realize he had zombie cards. And so that was
were you like, this is a zombie, right?
Pez of all people. That's embarrassing. Embarrassing.
Have you read the summon type on this card?
To be fair, a lot of them are like pre-modern cards you don't really think are zombies. They just happen to be zombies.
Yes.
Yeah.
We printed Drowned as Drowned from the dark, and Drowned is a zombie, but it does not say it on the card in the dark. So like he didn't know that. So it was like, hey, it looks like you've got 5 zombies. There's a zombie lord out there. And then he was like, oh, shit. And then he went and ran with that, right?
Right.
So, yeah, like, roughly, I don't want to say I handheld people, but there were a couple people, because, again, you're trying to maximize the fun for as many people as you can. And so identifying Sean early, here's another pile of cards, go get back in it. Helping Pez out, hey, go get back in. Try and just, like, throw them up 5 rungs on the ladder and try again. I mean, that's part of how it ended up working out, but I think it was to its benefit. Like Doug was there, and he didn't open Lich, and he's like, "Is Lich out there?"
He's
and you're
got
like,
to
"Yeah,
have Lich.
Lich is out there.
Forget.
Go find Lich."
I don't
right?
care about what's in my pack. No, this
Right,
is
yeah,
this is
exactly.
not me.
Yeah, Jeremy doesn't care what he gets. He just goes for Lord of Atlantis, right?
Right.
Like, there's probably a quarter of the field. What they're looking for, so the pieces are there, and then you kind of have to like help them out along the way to get them there so that they're engaging with the event, because there's certainly probably half of the people want to play this throughout the entire weekend as a casual thing, because not everybody brought a AAA deck or whatever is the hot and fancy thing on the East Coast versus the West Coast, right? We don't all travel with all of our things, so this at least is a common touching point. And if you can make it to the 48 hours of enjoyment, that's our goal.
Yeah, and I think that speaks to the genius of Urza's Ante, in that when it's not part of the schedule of events, like if it's not the main event or whatever it is that's going on between rounds, somebody has something in common that they can do and play while they're just killing time or something. And it's just awesome to have there as an option.
I just have a tech question in terms of printing. So, like, when you guys send these out to print, does the printer actually collate all these and pack them for you, or do you guys do that?
You've asked the right question.
I guess that's a no.
That's a huge no. You will see it on the spreadsheet. I think everybody has access to it.
Yeah.
We have a budget. So the way we run the event, we take in a pool of money and then we divvy up based upon prior years. And so let's say the budget was $2,500 for Urza's Ante. So we have to go, okay, what are all the things we want to get done in $2,500? Which then means when you go print cards, the way you get cards cheap is by printing 30 copies of them. That's the cheapest way you can do it. But then you don't necessarily want 30 copies of Mind Twist because Mind Twist is a horrible play experience. So manually, we broke down which cards get printed on what sheets and at which duplicity. So like there are cards that we want 8 copies of, 30 copies of, 2 copies of, you name it. We then try and lay them out and fill that sheet all the way to the end, getting the largest sheet possible. Because I think if you don't maximize things with makeplayingcards.com, that NPC site, you can end up paying like 30 cents a card. And we were getting closer to like 14 cents a card, which is just massively, we get so much more, right? But yeah, many hours of work to lay this out. And then they ship them in giant boxes. And then that was me sorting them for like 2 or 3 weeks.
Yes, Neil alphabetized them all.
Yeah.
And then he gave the giant boxes to me. And then me and my family, we went and picked all the packs. Like for the Jumpstart packs, I had to go through and just assemble them card by card alphabetically.
Wow.
And then for the other packs, what happened was we binned them by basic power level. So we had D's, which are sort of cards you don't really want, C's, B's, A's, and then S's, which are like really good cards. And then you have to color balance and like tile the packs versus like, okay, you got some dual lands, what slot does that go into a pack? You got a foil, where does that go in the pack? Okay, this pack is going to be given out after lunch on this day. We want this many B's and that many A's.
A lot of work. The summary is it's a ton of work. But also, like it's also, I mean, at least I consume it. I think Adam does as well. When you consume enough other like Magic content, like Mark Rosewater's podcast and whatnot, you'll pick up these little bits of information that just help you figure out, oh yeah, we need to get all of the D cards out on the first day because it's the only day they stand a chance of getting played. If you got a D at the end of the event, a Dredge Skeleton is meaningless, right?
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's like the forethought of what is the latest I can let a Dredge Skeleton go out there. And I think we ended up printing like 27,000 cards or something, and maybe only like 50 we didn't end up putting anywhere because they were just garbage. But like they didn't make any sense in the pack. We didn't have enough to put one in every pack, and so it was like, so they were part of the pile I just walked around with, helping people out if they needed it early on.
And you start to understand like why Magic operates the way it does. Like, why do they have packs with slots in them? Why do they have rarities? Why do like even in a project like this, you end up backing yourself back into the same scenarios. Like, why is there a list slot in the old set packs? It's, because they were collating them like this. And
right.
It all just sort of makes sense when you try to actually build one of these games.
Yeah, doing it by hand, right? Because you should not have gotten a pack that was a green rare and all green uncommons, all green commons. And if we randomized everything and just shuffle it up, that would absolutely happen. Right. And then you're a blue player and you got nothing, right? So by curating every single one of them, you kind of gave, okay, you're not in blue, but here's a mana drain. You know it's valuable. Good luck, right?
Right.
You guys are total micromanagers. You guys are like, this is the nothing to chance. I'm just kidding, but no, yeah, it's enormous amount of work. This is it's crazy. I had no idea. 27,000. That's insane.
Did you wind up playing it all, Adam? I think Neil, you said you were trying to help people out the whole time. Did you wind up playing the
I played a little bit at the beginning. I felt sort of awkward when the trading started because I had so much more knowledge.
You knew, yeah.
And so I didn't want to do that. I did a little bit of trading because there were some like pet cards that I wanted at the end of the event, so I traded for those more than trading. And then at that point, I didn't really have a deck anymore.
So I've heard that comment from Jeff Liu because I asked Jeff Liu at Chalice 5, hey, are you having fun playing it? And he's like, no, like I know the format, like I made it, like there's nothing for me here. And I could totally see why, there was nothing for me to play, right? Like I knew everything about it. It'd be like, I even know what deck you have, right? Because I've stared at the sheets for so long. It's a interesting problem that like you spend so much time on this and then your only enjoyment comes from watching other people enjoy it and you don't actually get enjoyment by itself playing. Yeah, it's very weird.
You guys have been playing it for a year or almost a year now. It's all
similar kind of enjoyment people get out of building cubes, right? Like you think about all the cards, think about all the archetypes. It's just a giant cube is what it is.
Yeah, and that's the cube thing is something that, and you, Neil, you played my cube once when you were at Chalice, and I enjoy playing. I think it's I think limited is like the best format, and cube is one of those things that I really like. But designing a cube, there's no perfect cube. I mean, it's just like you said, it's an enjoyment just doing it, and one of these days I hope to do a cube tournament, but we'll see.
Okay. So we had a cube tournament.
Okay.
I ran a cube tournament like 2 weekends ago at a local brewery.
How many people?
We had 20, ended up 22, which is not a great number. So 2 pods of 8 and 1 pot of 6.
Okay.
If you know, like the Beast, we do things a little bit differently. So it wasn't just cubes. It ended up being a team cube event. So you had to sign up with a partner. And then throughout the drafts, you're going to interact with your partner. So it's like a normal team event in that regard. But because of that, you don't get a lot of people. They're like, what the hell's a team cube event? You're like, all right, maybe not you. Anyway.
You're not invited.
Yeah, you're uninvited. So the big part I want to say is people came out to play in cubes. And they have more fun with the gathering part and the drafting. The gameplay is absolutely superfluous. When it's not a high stakes cube event or something with something on the line, it's about the draft more than anything else. So at the event, Adam and I played against Flint and Stephen Hines in an uncube. It's Flint's uncube. So it's all Unfinity, unglued, unhinged, all the mystery booster playtest cards. And absolutely, it was the best time to play Magic because those sets force you to do unfamiliar things.
Sure.
As opposed to when I played a common uncommon cube and got Rakdos Sacrifice, and it was like, well, this deck's just going to win. I don't need to like play this, right? Like I know it's going to win. So it's interesting in that regard that Flint's oddity of a cube was by far the most fun. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Did you guys use 3 of the same cube, or did you guys have 3 different cubes that you used for? Or how did that? I'm only curious because I'm kind of in this space theoretically. So
we got volunteered cubes. So I talked to Flint beforehand, and Flint had 2 cubes. He had an invasion prophecy cube and his uncube. Part of the Beasts are in Santa Cruz, and they cube every Tuesday. And so I talked to them and had, hey, what cubes do you have available? So there was a common uncommon cube, which is very fun. And I forget the other cube that he also brought. We had, I think it was circa 2017 Magic Online cube that somebody in the community that predates me had old bordered, all of them, changed out the art.
Wow.
And so I guess Jeremy had printed 1 copy, so he had a spare. So we had, call it 6 cubes that were all available. And for the event sign up, you had to pre-select which cubes you were interested in. And then I made sure to do all the pairings beforehand. So in that regard, it's not a traditional tournament. It was, tell me everything you want to do to have fun, and I will make sure that these are the cubes you're going to do. You're going to do this cube 1, you're going to do this the second. To kind of just lay it out. All the matches were predefined because teams do weird dynamics. But yeah, overall it was fun. If you're actually running an event, the thing about cubes is if people haven't seen the cube, you are massively going to underestimate the time it takes to complete a cube. Like, you were at Chalice. It took probably an hour to get enough people to fire a cube, which was annoying. But then the cube drafting itself is like an hour and a half, right? And on paper, you'd be like, we could do that in an hour. And it's like, no, we cannot, right?
Because everybody's looking and like, what is this? Why is this even in here? What is this? Is trash.
Particularly difficult for the uncube, where it's like, what does this card even do? Like I have to sing.
Yeah, that's at least 2 hours just to read.
Yes. Yeah. So those are some oddities with cubing. Like with your cube that you brought to Chalice, reading all the legends was like, I don't know how to evaluate these legends. Like, because the art is so familiar and it's not doing whatever Tuckneer, whatever is like, that's not what Tuckneer does. Like, Tuckneer does something else and you have to reprogram. It's really hard. Anyway, the cube.
Plus there's Scrying's cards. It's ridiculous. Just come on.
It's not that ridiculous, but it's definitely you want to be with a bunch of friends for it, not a competitive thing, right?
Yeah.
Anything competitive about Cube, I think, is, other than Magic Online, I wouldn't do anything competitive with Cube.
That being said, even if you put out a list of what the Cube has in it, I doubt that
Nobody's going to read it.
nobody's going to read it.
No.
Like, oh, there's actually 3 swords to plowshares in this cube, so this is what I'm going to do. Right. So.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, but I think I think it'd be a lot of fun. Like you said, drafting is the best part. I just have to keep people engaged for the rest of the cube tournament and make it worthwhile to actually win. I don't know.
I mean, the way they do money draft at Chalice, they just draft the decks that
and then they just
that they draft.
Right. This is why my deck is the best.
Yeah, I got Reckless Sacrifice. It's good.
It's That's true. That's all.
I unfortunately, we went to time at one of the cubes that we did, and I was like, oh, cool, I'll just plead your case of why your deck is going to win. The person who did not win was not happy and left the event shortly afterwards. So that curated not only card pool, but people pool is very important, right? You need to make sure it's somebody that, you can take this loss. It's not a big deal.
Yeah. So do you think that is there anything that you guys would do differently, or do you think that you guys will do this again next year, or you're done with it with all this work? It was a one-time thing and you're going to hand the reins over to somebody else?
In terms of what I would do differently, I do everything differently. I would just start from a new start.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah, I'd go back to the original constraints of what people expect the event to be. Like, I wouldn't do Jumpstart again. I would do something totally different, because I think that's...
Start fresh.
Yeah, I think that's what the audience wants. They don't want to come and have a 10% different experience. They want to have a 50% different experience.
Yeah.
100% agree.
Some of that, though, just to argue against that, though, like there were a good amount of new people at Chalice this year, I think, and they haven't experienced anything yet. And I think people loved the Urza's Ante. I would have personally, just speaking for myself, if it was very similar to last year's, the year before, Chalice, I would have been fine with that. You guys did an amazing job, and it was even more than expected, what I expected, but don't underestimate. Everybody's had such a great time in Chalice. You can run at least some of it back, some of the ideas back.
Especially for you guys, it's such a Christmas morning type experience, right? You spent 10 months or 500 plus hours, and then these things get ripped up in 48 hours. It's over, like just blast, and then maybe some of the guys just left all the cards there, or they'll end up in cubes later. But it's like. How much feedback did you actually get, from people, just to, whether reward you just for doing all of this,
Well, I think it's important to think about why spend this much time doing this thing, right? It's because I enjoyed it. I really enjoyed, we designed 80 decks, it really scratched my itch of building decks for a while. I could, do that. Or obsessing over exactly where the text goes on the card, or all that kind of thing. It's just fun. I enjoy doing it. So it's important to me that it was received well by the audience, that people had a good time and enjoyed it. But I wasn't looking for, anything else out of it other than the, Christmas morning experience.
Sure.
Yeah, I would 100% agree. If we volunteer for the committees. I'm pretty sure Jeff Liu is going to do it next year, because him taking a year off, he has ideas, which probably his feedback and Stephen Hines were probably the best feedback, because they've done it, 5 years, right? So they've used to it. That Jeff Liu really enjoyed it was a real good pat on the back, because, right, although Mike did the first one, Jeff Liu is kind of what makes it into what it is today. So that was great feedback. Doing everything differently, as Adam said, there's so much design space. I think I redacted a bunch of text because we have a Word document that I made public about, our thought process over the months. We probably had 8 ideas that were just as solid, and so just kind of save them for another event.
Yeah.
There's a lot of space here, and it's also tackleable by other groups. Maybe this podcast helps somebody go oh, I could do a similar thing with a captive audience over a weekend. You just need to price it accordingly to get the ability to print the cards and give yourself enough time, because this doesn't just have to be a Chalice thing. It clearly is currently, I know there's some other redacted events that do some sealed, but you can do these minor tweaks and it really makes it enjoyable.
You can also change some of the fundamental rules. Like one of the constraints we had, it has to be ante. Like the thing's called Urza's ante. You must play it for ante. But you don't have to do that. Like you could do whatever you want if you want to build a different event. But the idea of trying to curate a card pool like a cube, but not go through the same structure that a cube has, like picking a different structure for the event, I think is really, really something that anybody can run with.
Just to hop back on the design question, so when you guys were thinking of cards to add for the certain archetypes, like do you both have like preternatural understanding of the set so much, or were you like going back through like Scryfall and looking for stuff to add? I'm sure you already had some cards in mind that you wanted to put in there, but did you find yourself searching for other ones that like could potentially help the archetypes out?
I got so good at all this Scryfall search operator.
I mean, I didn't even know I could do this.
I mean, I do know the entire card pool, but I'm not like eidetic memory. I couldn't pull up like a random like which Leviathan is it that I want for this intersection of like zombies and fish. I just have to go, oh, actually, there is a zombie fish somewhere. I could use it, right?
Mm-hmm.
Other parts, because we knew the artists that were going to be in attendance, right? So that was an easy Scryfall. Go get everything from Heather Hudson and Daniel Jellin, and make sure that those cards were present. So not that people were to go get them signed or anything, but just, hey, we know that they're going to be there ahead of time. Why not, right?
Yeah,
sure.
Because I think they have Goblin Mutant is Daniel Jellin, which is that 5/3, and it's like, hey, iconic art, a little fun, maybe could see play.
Fits in at goblins, like the thing sort of makes itself when you put all the pieces down. And part of that just has to do with the way Magic is constructed, because each card has all these different hooks. It's got the type, it's got the functionality, it's got interaction with other cards. You just got to just put the pieces together in different ways and make different assemblages.
Mm-hmm.
I think you had asked a question. We're disappointed somebody didn't do anything. I put Mind Over Matter in the card pool. I really wanted somebody to do Mind Over Matter, Tolarian Academy. I don't think we put Stroke of Genius, but we had Brain Geyser. I thought for sure that would be the best deck at the end. And I don't think the person that ended up with the cards identified Mind Over Matter was in the card pool. Because, I so thought that was going to be people would hate me for that. But
yeah, that sounds miserable.
But when you live through it as a kid, it wasn't necessarily miserable doing that, right? It was so fun.
I really wanted squirrels to be a thing, but Neil would not let me put Earthcraft in I was like, why is this card banned? I didn't understand. It's fine.
Let me show you.
Yes.
I think, I also vetoed Opposition, I think, because Opposition was like, no, that's not the game direction we want, right? You can't have squirrels in Opposition.
Yeah, did Mind Over Matter come out? It must have come out in the packs afterwards,
correct.
Right?
Yeah,
okay.
We listed it. So in the spreadsheet, if you go to the blue card pool tab, it has an S next to it. So it was an S tier. It would have been probably Saturday night is that first time you would have seen it.
Mm-hmm.
Same thing with Time Spiral was out there. I don't know that anyone time spiraled.
Did all the packs get opened? Do you have unopened? Okay.
No, because I had to make sure that every pack was opened because we wanted all those cards available, right? Going to that, how much we had to micromanage everything. If certain altars were never opened, that would totally suck, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that's an example. And I want to say another memory, Adam, what was we put Death Shadow in early because that was one of the first cards that we had old school when we were coming up with the prototype. It was Vampiric Tutor and Death Shadow, which looks amazing in beta. But do you remember the story of the Death Shadow?
Yeah, so I wanted Lich and Death Shadow to be a thing because it's a cool combination. You can have a 13/13 Death Shadow, which you could never see, right?
God.
And there it was, walking through the downstairs area at some point. There it was in play. Somebody unsleeved on a piece of paper with a hot dog leaking on all their cards. Had Lich and Death Shadow in play at the same time.
Was it Duke?
Oh, was it Doug Greer? Yeah, it had to be.
That's funny. That's awesome.
It was actually a 14/14 Death Shadow because they were at -1 life.
I think that was Jomar.
Jomar,
yeah. Which I would not have suspected Jomar to end up going that path. But then, I think that's part of giving the option of having those cards. You identify oh yeah, I want to do that. It's a 14/14 Death Shadow. That's amazing, right? Yeah.
There's so many cool things that are possible in this card pool. I feel like nobody. I don't even think we hit half of them. Maybe I don't know.
You didn't. They were all opened. So I know Jeff Liu tried to do Phage the Untouchable. Never got
I
it
saw
off.
that. I saw that. Yeah.
Yeah, what were some other ones? I put Cabal Interrogator in there because Mano at some point had said it was his favorite card. Apparently, it's not his favorite card, so the Cabal Interrogator's just in the pool for whatever reason.
Cabal Therapy. He's a Cabal Therapy guy.
Okay.
Cabal. It was Cabal. It was something.
We put all the Cabal cards in, and we weren't sure which one it was.
Yeah, like we had Entomb in the pool, which is dangerous, right? But then I think you didn't have a payoff that like would win on the spot. I think it was Spirit of the Night was probably one of the best things you could do. But we had Spirit of the Night in, which is already impressive, right?
I wanted to put Eldrazi in, but
yeah. I vetoed Eldrazi.
You can't have Sneak Attack and Eldrazi. This is no good.
Yeah, that's bad. That's bad.
But I think that's part of the point of like the Sneak Attack. Why I was so firm on it being there, because you know the power level when you know the cards that are there, but when you don't know the creatures you can toss in, there's not a lot you can do in Old School with Sneak Attack, right? Maybe you can hit for like 7 or 8 with a Force of Nature or Lord of the Pit kind of thing, but that's about it. So it's not game ending, which I think is part of why it's such an interesting card in what we created.
I found myself arguing the merits of my trading stock to other people. So I was trying to, I don't even remember what I was trying to get off Simon Christie, and I had a biorhythm. And I was like, well, this will go great. And you got a lot of elves, so, you might not. And he was like, okay. Yeah. I think I saw him like the next day or something. He's like, did you do it? Did you do the biorhythm? He's like, I did it once. It's not that great. Oh, well.
I do remember Joel Demir talked about that on Mano's podcast, actually. He said Andy were running around trying to get, I think it was Jester's cap. And he's like,
yeah.
I don't know what he's doing with that, but I'm not trading it to him.
Yeah. I don't know, whatever. It's worthless to everybody else.
Why do you want it so bad?
Yeah, that was very like 8th grade of us. No, I don't want to trade it to you because you want it too bad. Yeah, that's great. That was awesome. But
yeah.
Yeah,
well,
guys.
These guys are only planning on an hour, so we might as well.
Yeah, I actually, I don't know if I think we hit it on everything. I think you guys did a great job, and appreciate you coming on and talking about the process. And
this will be episode 6 for us, and it's actually the closest thing we've ever done to an actual podcast. So thank you both very much.
We're trying to get more professional. The further along we go, but
I'm gonna guess if Adam is like me, he has all the spreadsheets open in front of him at the same time to help guide the conversation.
Yeah, there's no way I remember half the stuff.
Yeah. I have.
While you write everything down,
I have it open too. I just can't make any sense of it.
I asked Andy yesterday if you guys had a list, and he sent it to me, and I had a friend over last night, so I look at it. My infant daughter's been going berserk all day, so I'm like, I'm gonna check out the spreadsheet. It's like a half hour before we got on. I'm like, oh my god, I probably should have opened this last night because I love looking through stuff like this. So like, I'll probably do it when we're done here, but like, yeah, this is it's a lot.
But it's good.
Yeah, I use spreadsheets too much in my life, but I mean, sure. Anybody gets anything done without a spreadsheet.
Yeah, so if anybody out there is looking to set up something similar to a sealed or limited kind of event or experience in your local Old School Magic the Gathering event, please reach out to Neil or Adam, and they can, if you have any questions about the process that we didn't cover, and I'm sure that they will be glad to help you out, or at least point you in the right direction, or give you some advice on pitfalls that you might encounter, because I'm sure they have a lot of experience now in doing this and can make the process much more bearable. So again, guys, I just want to thank you taking the time from your busy days in beautiful California to talk with us. And I think it was great. I had a great time.
Well, thanks for giving us the opportunity to share our story.
Yes.
Awesome.
Thank you much.